Welcome to the Skull King Football Podcast, presented by Vox DFS Firelines. Now, here are your hosts, Justin and Ryan Skullrood.
Hello and welcome back, everybody, to the Skull King Fantasy Football Podcast. I am your host, Justin Skullrood.
And I am your co-host and founder, Ryan Skullrood.
Once again, the show is brought to you by Vox DFS Firelines at voxdfs.com. Week 13 is in the books, and I'm really hoping that if you have already played in the playoffs this week, you are still alive. If you're dead, there is still things to pay attention to for fantasy football. You want to start prepping for that next season. You want to still pay attention to see who's doing well. You'll write it down, mark it in your fantasy football notebook or whatever so that you can get an early look on players who will be notable next year and do that draft prep now. While the season is still going, there's still plenty of football to watch. We know you're all football fans. We know you're all watching the games. Or you could go like me in some of my leagues, even though I'm out. I have a commissioner who doesn't pay attention and did not deactivate non-playoff teams from the waiver wire. So I'm just going to have fun messing with people because I do that when I'm out and spiteful. But we have a good show for you today. We're going to get into some news and notes, some key injuries. We're once again going to cover a defensive injury, which I think is going to have massive ramifications, not only in fantasy but also playoffs, as well as our weekly show for waiver wire pickups. It's getting later in the season. Obviously, playoffs have started in some leagues. For most leagues, this could be week one of the playoffs, and at least by next week you'll be in the playoffs. And so you want to do a little bit more of roster protection rather than trying to do flyers. Cover those guys, handcuff those guys who could get injured. You don't want to have to go waiver wire hunting in the playoffs. It's just not good for anybody. And so we'll get into the news and notes, starting off with a player who had an insane week. Thomas Rawls had a monster game against Carolina, but left the game due to a possible concussion. He cleared concussion protocol, but this could be something that could linger. He did not have a very good second half in comparison to his first half. I think that was more than just the fact that they were blowing out the Panthers. I think there could be some residual effects from that. Ryan, did you see anything that would lead you to that conclusion?
I don't know. I mean, watching the game, it looked like Carolina had actually made some adjustments in the second half to stop up the run.
Apparently not for Tyler Lockett, though.
Well, that was that was just a nice end around that the tight end, I believe it was Vanette, made a really great block to seal off the corner, and after that, it's Tyler Lockett's off to the races. Now that he's fully healthy, he's going to be a hard guy to stop on something like that. So, as far as I could tell, Rawls still seemed to be moving around all right, hitting holes fine. They're just, I think that Carolina has a pretty good run-stopping defense, and so I think it was more of they had made their adjustments to take care of, to take away the run, and then after that, Seattle was still able to pass the ball around a little bit. So,
moving on, the Saints tight end Josh Hill suffered a broken fibula on Sunday. I know that some of you may not think that this is notable fantasy football news. He may not have been the greatest point scorer, but when he was on the field, Coby Fleener was not. He was out-snapping Coby Fleener, especially on rundowns. He was in there to help run the ball. I think this is more detrimental to Mark Ingram and to Hightower than it is a positive for Coby Fleener. What are your thoughts?
I'd have to agree with you there. The Saints have had an okay time running the ball. But again, it's Josh Hills. It was a big part of that, especially like I talked about with Vanette, sealing off the corner for Lockett. If they're going to do any outside runs, they need a Josh Hill to be able to seal out that outside. So, this will have a bit of an effect, and it was actually obvious, halfway through that game where just The New Orleans offense wasn't able to get anything going. They couldn't get in a rhythm. The Detroit defense did pretty well to stop them up, but they couldn't even get any run game going. And Hill's injury may have partially affected that. So.
And we will get to Detroit a little bit later when we talk about some defenses. Speaking today, Chiefs coach Andy Reid said he doesn't know when Jeremy Maclin he doesn't know when or if Jeremy Maclin will be available for Week 14. This is spelling bad news for playoff owners who have held on to Jeremy Maclin for a little while. This is good news for those of you who picked up
Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, Tyreek Hill, Tyreek the Freak, as some have called him. It's good news for him. I think it is good news for Travis Kelce because it's one less go-to big target in the passing game. And so I think this is good news for Kelce and Tyreek. Obviously bad news for those Jeremy Maclin owners. We do have some wide receivers that you may want to look at later in the show on who to pick up this week. Cecil Shorts has informed Britt McHenry that he dislocated his knee and got the trifecta. He tore his ACL, MCL, and PCL. I don't know how his lower leg is still attached to his upper leg other than skin.
The patellar tendon holding on his kneecap is the only thing keeping his knee attached. That's it.
I saw an injury like this most notably when it was the national championship between Ohio State and Miami. And for the life of me, the running back's name escapes me. But it's not a pretty injury. It's not something that you'll come back quickly from. I think this does some serious damage to his potential of coming back next season in time for the start of the season.
I think that Cecil Short's career is over, and here's why. It's not so much the injury. It's the combination of this is a devastating injury to his knee, where he needs to have all three of those major ligaments redone, replaced. He was a middling wide receiver, like 4 or 5 when he was healthy. So I think at this point, he needs to look at a coaching career, if anything.
Yeah, it's one of those things where obviously our thoughts and prayers go out with him. This is a devastating thing. This is where this could be tricky to walk after this injury. And so football obviously is probably on his mind because he's a football player. But once again, we want to wish him a speedy recovery considering the brutality of that injury. Moving on to Julio Jones, this is not a shocker, but he's dealing with a foot injury, which is kind of the norm for Julio Jones. This time it's a case of turf toe, but he's expected to be fine next week. I know a ton of people who have – basically everyone who has Julio Jones has kind of had the boom and the bust weeks. He's had 4 weeks where he scored less than 10 points. He's had other weeks where he scored a lot. It is something to where Julio Jones is kind of a hit and miss of the superstars. I kind of wish he would have had a season like an Odell Beckham Jr. where it was hot for one part and cold the other part. Makes it easier to set a lineup. Do you believe that this is going to have any sort of impact considering the massive amount of weapons that Atlanta has this week?
I think that Julio Jones, dealing with the turf toe, Julio Jones is going to play. Julio Jones will be fine. If you look at the defenses that he has left to go up against, he's got the LA Rams, he's got the San Francisco 49ers, the non-existent Carolina defense, secondary, and New Orleans again in Week 17. If your team goes, if you're like I've said before, if your commissioner doesn't pay attention and sets your league to play in Week 17. So, honestly, Julio Jones is fine. You're going to start Julio Jones. You're not going to not start Julio Jones unless he is injured and it says he is not going to play. Otherwise, we're starting Julio Jones, period.
So are you concerned about the Rams schematically zeroing out the number one receiver of another team?
Only if
Sorry, that's just
only if
cheap
that number one receiver is Brandon.
Sorry, I couldn't resist considering. So even if that were to happen, everyone else in Atlanta is going to score a touchdown because that's
basic. Well, at least one.
At least one.
Let me see. Let's actually take a look. Brandon Cooks this last week. Okay, so 7 of 9 for 73. So he had an okay game. Not great, but.
Once again, another defensive injury that we want to update people on. Brandon Marshall's hamstring injury. He's expected to miss Week 14 against the Titans. The Broncos' run defense has not been the same since his injury. I consider this to be a continual issue. This is bad news for the Broncos because they're going up against a very, very, very good running team and a quarterback in Marcus Mariota who can run, a solid starter in DeMarco Murray, and an even monstrosity of a handcuff backup running back in Derrick Henry. I think this bodes problems for Denver in the next game. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, they're already the 5th worst in the league in terms of rush yards per game at 122.8.
And they were like top 3 last year.
Yeah.
If not the top.
They were, they're definitely struggling. I really like DeMarco Murray next week. Is that game? Let's take a quick look at that game. Is that game where's that game at? Is it at Tennessee or is it in Denver?
Let me pull that up really quick.
Got it. It's at
Tennessee.
At Tennessee. So yeah, that's honestly, in my opinion, that's even worse. Especially in DFS, I'd be very happy to be putting DeMarco Murray in my lineups this next week.
Yeah, I don't care what the spread is on that one. I'm taking Tennessee in that game.
Yeah, I'd have to agree.
It's the first place Tennessee Titans.
Isn't it a 3-way tie now?
Yeah, they're 6-6. They're 6-6. I thought that was more. It sounded cooler to just say the first place Titans than it did to say 500 Titans. And so moving on, Chris Sims. It is reported that he will be activated this.
Charles Sims.
Sorry, Charles Sims. I don't know why I do that.
Chris Sims is part of Bleacher Report.
Yeah, I know. I just see the C Sims and I just read it as Chris Sims.
And wasn't all that great of a professional quarterback, to be completely honest.
No. And so Charles will return this week. Is he someone actually, if I remember correctly, we'll talk about this one in a little bit. I'll ask you a couple of questions later on when we deal with a couple other running backs that are coming up. But the Broncos send Capri Bibbs with his ankle injury to the injured reserve and pick up Justin Forsett off of the waivers. And do you think this is notable at all for Justin Forsett? He's back with his coach for that on the team that he had a monstrous year?
No.
So third team is not a charm?
No. And really it's –
I keep lobbing up softballs thinking you'd hit one out of the park, but I'm not getting –
I am hitting them out of the park.
I'm just throwing like Ryan Fitzpatrick, huh?
So here's the deal. Justin Forsett is his career's done, and again, he's 31, 32 now, and he doesn't have the build that Frank Gore does to be able to keep doing what he's been doing. To get to right around 1,000 yards every year of his career. Frank Gore is built more like a tank. Justin Forsett has never been that. Justin Forsett's always been more of a scat back, better at catching the ball out of the backfield. He had the one big year in, was it 2014, where he had that great year, rushed for over 1,000 yards. I want to say it was the 5th leading rusher in the league. I just think that it's he's past his prime now. He's lost a step. And so at this point, I think he's more just insurance. He could provide, won't necessarily say a spark, but when your quarterback is Trevor Siemian or Paxton Lynch, you can load the box and say, okay, beat me. Your wide receivers are good, but can you even get the ball to them? So So I'm not seeing much out of Justin Forsett.
And then kind of on to our last notable piece of news. I think the Earl Thomas injury has massive ramifications for the Seahawks moving forward. When Earl Thomas was out against the Buccaneers just jumped on the Seahawks early. Now, granted, they fixed their scheme issues and were able to shut out the Buccaneers the rest of the game, but as much as the Packers have struggled this season, their passing game, to me, is better than the Buccaneers because the Buccaneers, I consider the Detroit Lions 2.0. They have a Megatron that they will just lob the ball up to, and they don't really have receivers of note throughout the rest of their roster. Humphreys leaves me wanting way too much. Cameron Brate's a solid tight end. Doug Martin is a solid running back. Charles Sims will probably be involved in the passing game, but other than that, the Buccaneers are what they are. But getting back to the Earl Thomas injury, I think this is devastating. And to me, putting my Seahawks fandom aside, I now think that the Cowboys are the team to beat out of the NFC.
Yeah, because Earl provided that not only just the hammer to receivers over the middle, great hands, great speed. We know the missile that he was, and basically, I think he had it. It wasn't just the perforated lung. I wonder if he had anything to do with just rocking Gronk's worlds and for that back injury that he is now, he's on IR for. With Earl Thomas, his season being done with the broken leg, he was able to run up and stop and help stop the run. Him and Cam Chancellor,
as well as cover that massively deep ball,
as well as be able to cover the deep ball. So, and while I want to say, is it Steven Terrell? Is the safety that they have back there now?
I can't remember. I should have looked it up before the show.
Yeah, so he is not Earl Thomas, obviously.
No one is in the league,
but he is a very good safety. He is not all pro, but I think that he can fill in. I want to say he can fill in well enough for the scheme that the defense plays to be able to. Seahawks are still going to give up the deep ball. I mean, when they showed it first play, first possession that Carolina gets the ball last night after Thomas goes out, deep ball touchdown for 50, 60 yards. So I think the Seahawks will still be okay if they can provide a pass rush. Now that Michael Bennett's back, they'll be able to provide that pass rush a little bit better. So I think that'll help. But yeah, it is a bit of a blow, and I think that Dallas was already the team to beat in the NFC. I think that Seattle could beat them when they're hitting on all cylinders, but Dallas is the team to beat.
Last side note is that to me, defense wins championships. Seattle's defense is way better than the Cowboys' offense. And defense. I shouldn't say way better than the offense. I think that when you grade the teams, obviously the best unit on the field would have been the defense of Seattle, then probably the offense of the Cowboys, and then whatever. But that's getting a little too far ahead. We'll cover that in later shows when we gear up for the NFL season playoffs. But once again, that has kind of wrapped up our news and notes. Is there another injury or bit of news that you want to cover before we get into the waiver wire?
I think that was all the major injuries that I had seen. Most of the other notifications that I had seen were more performance related than they were
or minor nicks and tweaked ankles and those kinds of things.
I'm not seeing anything at this point. I mean, Percy Harvin is on IR. Surprise, surprise, surprise.
Yeah. He's been on IR all year, in my
Well,
opinion.
no, he unretired and came back for like 2 games. And
How
then,
many times did he touch the ball?
yeah, about that. So, yeah, I think that was it. I think we've pretty much covered everything. Oh, here we go. Not that it really matters. The ESPN's Pat McManaman wrote that all signs point to Robert Griffin III getting the start this next week against Cincinnati.
We're going to cover that towards the end of our waiver wire pickups.
So yeah, there's that. And yeah, okay, that was the last thing. So
okay, Ryan, hit us with that sponsorship promo that's going on for the NFL.
All right, so here we go. So you guys have heard us do some of our little promos and ads. So here we go. One of our partnerships is with NFLshop.com. NFLshop.com is the official online store of the National Football League and offers the biggest selection of officially licensed NFL apparel and merchandise online. Shoppers looking for Nike jerseys, the game day collection featuring apparel from NFL or from Nike and headwear from New Era. Will find what they want for all 32 teams at NFLshop.com. You can get customized jerseys or hats with numbers, your name. They've got the Color Rush jerseys, which are really cool. They've got the Salute to Service gear, which I still think is absolutely awesome. I would love to get a Salute to Service Seahawks hat personally. And then what we've got there's a special deal going on at NFLshop.com. If you go to skullkingfootball.com/NFL shop, that's skullkingfootball.com/NFL shop. We have a banner on that page for 25% off all orders over $50. Now, they do have a couple of things that are excluded on there. There's a couple of things that are already on sale or quantity items that they're taking off there. But if you go to skullkingfootball.com/NFL shop, click on the 25% off orders over $50 banner. You should be able to find a lot of cool stuff to use to buy for Christmas gifts. Christmas coming up, and you can get the shipping is actually pretty quick. We actually ordered since Dad doesn't listen to the podcast, I guess we can say this. we ordered our dad an Earl Thomas jersey for this year for Christmas. We got 25% off of it. Great deal. Pretty quick shipping. It's going to be. We ordered it, I want to say last Friday or something like that. It's going to be here Thursday. So, like I said, pretty quick shipping. So yeah, go to again skullkingfootball.com/NFL shop and get 25% off your orders of over $50 to save some money for on your Christmas shopping, as well as maybe even getting yourself something. So there we go. That's our sponsor, or that's our little advertisement for the show.
Okay, moving into our waiver wire pickups. Number one, we're going to start with the quarterbacks. To me, there's really only one option right here, especially after our I didn't pick Colin Kaepernick, so I don't have to apologize. You can apologize to the people
I can apologize for that one.
I agreed with you that he should have been someone that we should have picked up, but I'm not surprised by kind of the abysmal behavior. Chicago had been playing some pretty sound defense. Colin Kaepernick actually set a record for the first quarterback in NFL history. You have to have 5 passes to qualify for this, but he had more sacks against him than yards thrown in a game. 4 yards passing, he was sacked 5 times, benched later on in the game. I think you got to drop Kaepernick, because if he got benched, Blaine Gabbert's probably going to be your starter next week. If not, you never know how quick the hook's going to come from here on out.
This is. I think this spells the end of Colin Kaepernick. I think honestly, we talk about the Cleveland Browns and how they always seem to find a way to let you down. And last week was one of those weeks where I needed, this past week, I really, really, really needed Terrell Pryor to play. And the Browns let me down because they were on bye week.
Yeah, pretty much.
And you couldn't, and even worse, you couldn't stream against the Browns, which was even worse. So
you can this week.
You can this week if you're in the playoffs. And so Colin Kaepernick was basically the same thing. As soon as you really think you can trust him, nope.
Poop the bed.
Yeah. So yeah, I've been done with Colin Kaepernick for a while. I thought he was a good pick, and obviously I was wrong, and that's kind of the way my season has gone. So,
but you weren't the only one who said it. And so my quarterback pickup this week, I really only have one. Like I said, is Joe Flacco. Joe Cool is who he is. They're throwing the ball more. I mean, he had 47 attempts, 36 for 47, 384, and 4 touchdowns. He did throw 1 interception. But looking at the defense that he's going to be facing in the next couple of weeks, obviously he's facing New England, but New England is not the defense that they were at the beginning of the season. Philadelphia is crumbling to pieces over the last couple of weeks on defense. Pittsburgh is kind of always a hit and miss. In Cincinnati, in Week 17, should your season go that long, isn't really that great. You just really, Cincinnati more depends on the team that they're going to be playing. Obviously, playing against Philadelphia this week, once again, Philadelphia's defense being abysmal. I think Joe Flacco is the quarterback to pick up right now as the only really quarterback that I would see worth picking up. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think that could be he could have a good game against New England. It is at New England, and if there's a team that's actually had somewhat success in crunch time against New England in New England, it's been the Baltimore Ravens. They've had a couple of years where they've been in the playoffs, and they have gone into New England and beaten the Patriots. So I mean, I like that. I like that pickup. For me, it's one of the same guys I picked last week is Alex Smith. Now, Smith didn't have the greatest game this past week. They beat Atlanta. A lot of what they did was on the ground with Spencer Ware. Which let's be honest, is to be expected. Alex Smith isn't gonna light up the week. But again, what you're looking for in a streaming quarterback is what? 250 and 250 yards and 2 touchdowns in a streaming quarterback. And what in this last week he had 270 and 1. So he just missed there. He's got Oakland, who has given up the eighth most points to quarterbacks this year in fantasy. And so with the matchup, a divisional rivalry. Let me see what has Oakland done. Let me actually load this up. Against the run, Oakland is good grief. They're
not good.
They're just behind Denver at 124 yards per game, and in terms of passing yards per game, let's see who has passed them. They've actually moved up a little bit. Wait, that's total yards per game. Pass yards per game. There we go. Where are they? Oakland. Oh, hey, they moved up. They're to 24th. They only give up 264 yards per game in the air. So, it's a good matchup for Alex Smith. Again, you're looking for 250 and 2, which I think against the Oakland defense, Smith can do that. So,
what are your thoughts? This is not a pick for me, but I have seen this pick on other sites. Brock Osweiler.
No.
The only reason I'm bringing this up is he's going to be playing Indianapolis. Now, Indianapolis played the Jets played a horrible game tonight against Indianapolis. I think that's more the Jets' cluster jam that is their team right now, more than the Indianapolis Colts defense being all of a sudden phenomenal. But do you see Brock Osweiler even remotely close? Over the last 4 weeks, he has thrown 4 picks. He's thrown 5 touchdowns. His point total has been 18, 17, 15, and 21. He has kind of done that 250 and 2 range, but you're still saying no?
I'm still saying no.
I am too, by the way, just clarifying.
The Colts defense was okay. This was okay tonight. Again, you had Bryce Petty coming in for Fitzpatrick. Fitzpatrick's done. I don't even think he's much of a backup anymore. I think that there's just, I think that he has served his purpose for enough teams, and that I think that he's losing the arm strength. He doesn't. I don't think he really has that anymore.
So draft test. You think that draft test is done career wise?
I think so.
You caught the reference, right?
The draft test.
Yeah, he set the record for the highest score on the draft test.
Oh, on the Wonderlic.
Sorry, I couldn't think of that when I first said it.
Well,
Yeah.
you know why he scored the highest on the Wonderlic?
Why?
He's a Harvard grad.
Well, obviously, I said that. He's from Harvard, but still.
Sorry, I guess I was talking over you and didn't hear that. So, all right. Okay, getting back to Brock Osweiler. I don't trust his consistency enough when his leading receiver in terms of not only targets but receptions over like the last 4 or 5 weeks is CJ Fedorowicz at tight end, because he can't get the ball farther than 5 yards beyond the line accurately to DeAndre Hopkins. That causes some major issues. Now, I'm big on CJ Fedorowicz for this next week against the Indianapolis Colts defense, but other than that, no, I'm not seeing Brock Osweiler. So,
moving on to the running back position, my number one running back to pick up, and I think this is by far and away the individual that needs to be picked up for anyone who's looking for a running back to either stash or to play in the playoffs. He's not a starter, but over the last 8 weeks, he has scored a touchdown in every game he has played on average. And so, obviously, this is Mike Gillislee. He did not play last week against Jacksonville, so that game's out the bye week in Week 10. But Week 5, touchdown. Week 6, 61 yards and a touchdown. Week 7, he did not score against Miami. New England, 85 and a touchdown. Seattle, 32 and a touchdown. Cincinnati, 72 yards, no touchdown. But this week against Oakland, 49 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's getting the ball near the goal line on the short yardage plays. He's more power than LaShawn McCoy. So, to me, Gillislee is someone that you could pick up and possibly start at a flex position. Should you be desperate and not have a lot of wide receiver depth. Obviously, that's in standard leagues. You do not want to do that in PPR because he doesn't get the ball thrown to him, and the points that you get off catches is way more valuable.
Yeah, I agree. Mike Gillislee has done a very good job of taking over Carlos Williams' role from last year. So Gillislee is I see as a solid pickup to be to be that backup, to be a stash just in case something happens to Shady. He's got Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Miami, and if you just go regular playoffs, 14, 15, 16, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Miami. Miami is really the toughest one in there. Cleveland has no rush defense. Pittsburgh's coming back and forth, so they've been very inconsistent. So Mike Gillislee is definitely, especially if there's a possibility of Shady being injured, Gillislee is a good pickup. So moving on to mine. Is that your only one?
My other one, and I'm going to make this one really short, is really only a handcuff because Latavius Murray has been hot and cold. Now, he's been very cold and then very hot. There's been no middle ground. There's been no hot to cold to hot to cold to hot to cold. But Jalen Richard right now is the clear backup. Obviously, assuming Derrick Henry should already be owned in every league, in my opinion. So you're looking, like I said at the beginning of the show, you're looking to protect your assets right now, and Latavius Murray is an asset that you are starting or you should be starting, and Jalen Richard can be a solid backup. Now, he's not scored since week 1, but right now he got more touches than he has in any other week, even though Buffalo jumped out to an early lead. 9 rushing attempts for 53 yards. He's a serviceable backup that you don't want to have to try and pick up off the waiver wire should something happen to Latavius Murray. That's really the only reason why you pick him up. Handcuff only, but that's someone that you should pick up to kind of stash to protect your roster.
Yeah, I can't disagree there. I had Latavius in, I want to say, one league. And he was, again, he was kind of back and forth all year. He did pretty well for me this year, just, or in this last week, just wasn't enough for me to get the win, Richard has proven to be the top backup right now in Oakland. For my, since you took those two, my only real name that I had was Charles Sims. And again, that's more of a stash to see if he can be productive in maybe the second week of the playoffs. He's going to be activated this week. Doug Martin has been kind of irregular, dealing with injuries all season. And as long as Sims can come back somewhat in shape, his versatility of being able to catch the ball out of the backfield, really, really serves well, especially in PPR leagues, to be used as a flex. So that's all I had for running backs this week.
Moving on to the wide receiver, I can't believe that I'm mentioning this name, but I am saying Brandon LaFell this week should be someone that you should pick up because he's playing Cleveland. He's getting more targets than any other receiver on his team, except for maybe Eifert. But over the last 3 weeks, 9 targets, 7 targets, 32, 38, and 95 yards. So there was a little bit more of a bump, but he was playing much tougher defenses in Buffalo and Baltimore those 2 weeks. I see him having a good week against Cleveland. You have a different opinion on the same team. Who do you got?
I've got Tyler Boyd, and here's why. Go back and count up the target. How many targets for LaFell the last 3 weeks?
Last 3 weeks, 9, 9, and 7.
Okay, for Boyd, it's been 8, 9, and 6, so he's only had 2 less targets. He has finished with 1 touchdown and 182 yards over those 3 weeks, 15 catches. So they're both being targeted, really because they have no running game at all. I mean, they've got Jeremy Hill now with Lance or with Rex Burkhead,
yes,
as their backup. So they really don't have much of a choice but to see what their season is over. Because they're 4.
They're out.
They're done. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh yeah, because they had the tie, so they're 4, 7, and 1.
Yeah, 4, 7, and 1.
So yeah, they're done. And so I think for me, I see this as an opportunity for them to really figure out what they have in Tyler Boyd. And so I can see them trying to pepper him with targets to see how he can handle it, especially with AJ Green gone. So, and Brandon LaFell can't seem to, he's a wild card on whether or not he can actually hold on to the ball. So,
yeah, I mean, they're very, very comparable. 1 touchdown, 185 yards, so just a little bit behind. I think Tyler Boyd may have 1 or 2 catches more, but LaFell, to me, has been proven more throughout the season with 550 yards, 5 touchdowns. He's had solid games, even against Dallas. Last time against Cleveland, he went 4 catches on 5 targets for 83 yards and a touchdown. So I'm saying he's going to do the same, probably a little bit better. One random question to get slightly off topic. With 4 games left, is this the only chance that the Browns have of winning a game? They have Cincinnati, Buffalo, San Diego, and Pittsburgh. Maybe San Diego.
Maybe.
For a Merry Christmas.
This is getting. I really think that they're going to finish 0-16. They're
retribution for the basketball and the baseball season, huh? For Cleveland.
Yeah. They're just not very good. And again, I talked about this last week with Greg. It's not the coaching. It is they are having to completely rebuild that roster.
Every week.
Yeah. There hasn't been a lot of talent there. They're rebuilding a defense. I mean, there is some talent there. They have a little bit of talent on the defense. Joe Hayden's been a top corner, but now he can't stay healthy. So, in terms of that, I think he's kind of reaching the end of his usefulness. They've got Danny Shelton who has done okay stopping the run up the middle in the defense, but they're still a terrible run defense because no one else on the defensive line can get anything done. The Browns have Terrell Pryor, who has shown to be
just as good as AJ Green, according to stat lines.
Yeah, he's finished. I want to say right now he's a top 12 wide receiver in PPR. Top 15. They need to figure out the quarterback position. They need someone who can stay healthy. They need to draft another quarterback. Cody Kessler's not it. Cody Kessler's shown he is not it. And they've got Pryor and Coleman as wide receivers. They need to keep building in the draft. They need to keep, I think that they could get a crap ton of draft picks if they trade down. So,
yeah. And once again, getting a little too far ahead of ourselves, I don't see there being a notable quarterback to draft that would be a quick rebound like an Andrew Luck or
I don't think there's anyone like that.
I don't think there's anyone like that in this year's draft. And so my other wide receiver to pick up is someone who has been trending upward and has done very, very consistent, good work over the last 3 weeks, and that's Malcolm Mitchell. Tom Brady even came out and said a couple of weeks ago, I think after the first game, that he likes how smart Malcolm Mitchell is. I was holding off because I thought this was a splash in the pan while Chris Hogan was banged up. Chris Hogan got back onto the field this week, and Malcolm Mitchell still went 10 targets, 8 receptions, 82 yards, no touchdown this time, so he scored 3 touchdowns in the last 3 weeks. But he's going up against Baltimore, and Baltimore is a very, very good run defense team. I think they're going to plug up blunt force trauma in LeGarrette Blount, and they're going to have to do more of the passing game against Baltimore. Obviously get Dion Lewis and James White more involved on kind of some screen passes and getting some of that little bit of the running back pass catching ability. But I see Malcolm Mitchell continuing to get 10 targets a week or high target volume, especially considering that there is no Gronkowski anymore for the rest of the season for the Patriots.
Yeah, I think Baltimore's the top overall defense. They're number 2. They're tied with New England for second best in terms of points per game.
Fantasy-wise, the number 1 defense is Minnesota.
Yeah, but I'm talking just stat lines. If we're going to compare rush defense against pass defense, their rush defense, they've only give up 73.8 yards per game on the ground. But passing yards per game, they're number 7. They only give up 222 pass yards per game. Now, again, they're going up against Tom Brady in New England. And so
Tom Brady's going to get you 250 and 2.
He's going to get you 250 and 2 at least. So, in New England, yes. So, I agree with you that Malcolm Mitchell needs to be owned. Period. I mean, what's his percentage? He is
30%,
and that's jumped 27% in the last day.
You're not chasing points by picking him up this week. He's done it for 3 weeks in a row. It's not someone you're chasing because of a big game like you would if you're trying to go for Dwayne Allen.
So,
right.
And Malcolm Mitchell, they were praising Malcolm Mitchell in the preseason, and then what was it? He dislocated his elbow or something in the preseason.
Yeah, there was an injury.
And so having to come back from that, and he's missed a few games with injury. So really, the only reason to not go with Malcolm Mitchell is if he gets injured. Right now, he does have a couple of tough defenses. Weeks 14 and 15 with Baltimore and Denver, especially the one at Denver. That could be a little difficult, but then he's got championship week 16. He's got the New York Jets. So Malcolm Mitchell is definitely someone that I'm going to be targeting in the one league or in the 1 or 2 leagues I actually made the playoffs in. So
moving on to the tight end position, I want to touch on Dwayne Allen. Once again, he is owned in over 50% of leagues. Just let me double-check that. But he had a monstrous game tonight. I don't see that happening again. Dwayne Allen owned in 28% of leagues. So for those of you that have him, if trades are still available, I say trade him, and here's why. Look at who he's got for the next 2 weeks. If playoffs start this week, you got him for a good week. But if you're still able to trade throughout the playoffs, which
there are a couple leagues that allow that.
There are leagues that allow it. He's going up against Houston and Minnesota the next 2 weeks. Those are not good matchups, especially considering the inconsistency between the tight end on who's the go-to guy. Jack Doyle should have had a touchdown tonight had he not fumbled the ball literally on the 1 yard line for a touchback. And so there's no clear number one tight end in Indianapolis. He only had 4 targets. He caught the ball 4 times. He was playing the Jets. The Jets were missing a top safety, and the safeties cover the tight ends, and he was wide open on 2 of his touchdown passes, the first 2. There was no one literally within 10 yards. I don't see that happening again, especially against sound defense in Houston and Minnesota. I'd stay away if you've got something deeper and you want to try and stash him for week 16 and 17 if you're still in the playoffs. Oakland and Jacksonville are good matchups. But if you can trade him and get someone who's a little bit better on tight end and more consistent and someone's chasing points, go for it.
Yeah, I agree with you. Again, Dwayne Allen, 4 catches for 72 yards and 3 TDs. That just doesn't happen. He hasn't even been able to stay healthy. So, I agree with you. I'm not going that direction.
The tight end that I do see as someone to pick up, Ladarius Green out of Pittsburgh. Now, Roethlisberger is not the greatest on the road, and he's got Buffalo and Cincinnati the next 2 weeks. But he's gaining a lot more target share. Once again, been alive, quote unquote, fantasy football relevant for the last 4 weeks. They've mentioned wanting to get him more involved before this week happened. They did that. They got him 11 targets, 6 catches, 110 yards, and a touchdown against a New York Giants defense, which was trending upward and doing very well. They just ran into a buzzsaw in Antonio Brown. But these next couple of defenses, they're going to tee off on not tee off, but they're going to shade towards Antonio Brown, and I think that leaves big holes to the middle of the field for Ladarius Green. He was a monstrous target for San Diego. Ben Roethlisberger is a solid quarterback. I think Ladarius Green is someone you're going to look at and not regret picking up for the last weeks.
I agree with you there. I mean, I think that he's going to be more involved. He's kind of, with, you talk about Wheaton's been out. God, who is that other? Sammy Coates has been out. He's got 2, he's still dealing with his 2 broken fingers. And so it's, in terms of big receivers, it's the 2 tight ends in James and Green. And then you've got the 2 little guys on the outside with, it's, kind of funny to call Antonio Brown a little guy, but it's more just because of his size. I mean,
he's not a big body.
He's a monster player. And then you've got Eli Rogers, who's, more of a slot guy. So, yeah, I think that, Green, I think that there's more coming from Green. And he showed that big playability when he was playing in San Diego. So, with him, it was a matter of couldn't stay healthy and had a little trouble with consistency.
One thing to throw in there as well, Green only played 14 snaps and was targeted 11 times. So when he's on the field, Roethlisberger's looking for him.
Yeah, that's a nice little.
He is no Jesse James. We'll put it that way.
Yeah,
he can catch the ball.
All right, so I almost get tired of saying C.J. Fedorowicz's name, to be completely honest. But again, he didn't
have the greatest week.
Okay, but again, we're looking at for me, I'm looking at PPR leagues. Because that's what I play. I play PPR leagues. I don't play standard leagues. I play PPR. And in terms of PPR, he's been solid. He's hitting right about his projection. He's had, what, two... He's missed his projection, as far as I can see, once since week 4. So if you're looking for a tight end to just kind of, if you're streaming tight ends, you're only looking for like 9-10 points in PPR leagues.
Yeah, and he's getting targets. I mean, he
is the only one that Brock Osweiler has been able to find semi-consistently. And if you look, if you even look at his targets, he's had one game since week 5 where he's had less than 6 targets. He is getting the ball thrown his direction. It's just part of the problem is that Osweiler can't get the ball farther than 5 yards past the line of scrimmage accurately. So, this last week he finished 6 of 9 for 44 yards. That's 10 points in PPR.
And had it not been for the fact that DeAndre Hopkins got a touchdown, he would have beat him again.
Yeah. Well, it's true. Oh my gosh, that's so true. CJ Fedorowicz has been outperforming Hopkins pretty much the entire season. And so going back to, this next week, they've got Indianapolis. Indy is giving up the 8th. I want to say it's the 7th most points in fantasy to the tight end position in PPR leagues, in just regular PPR leagues. And so, he's got a great matchup. Again, I'm not putting my trust in Osweiler. I'm putting my trust in his top target. The only guy that he seems to be able to hit on a consistent basis is CJ Fedorowicz. So, if you're looking for just a streaming tight end, honestly, Fedorowicz is only owned in 40% of leagues, and so he has good matchups these last 3 weeks. So pick him up if you're streaming tight ends. Please pick up CJ Fedorowicz.
Please listen to us, please. And getting on to the defenses, I have 2. Obviously, this week the Browns are playing. So what have we told you all season? Stream against the Browns. So Cincinnati is playing Cleveland, so that means you stream Cincinnati's defense unless you've got a very, very solid top 5 defense. Once again, they're going to throw picks. They're going to turn the ball over. They're going to get down early. It's just not good things in Cleveland right now. So I call this game kind of the battle of the suck pit of Ohio. Because Cincinnati's not having a good season, and Cleveland's having a worse one. So,
well, and who's
no
the other
offense to those that live in Ohio?
Who's the other guy that we talk about? Who's the other person we talk about that you stream against? Blake Bortles.
Yeah, Blake Bortles. Sorry, I always forget that one.
Last week he couldn't stream against Blake Bortles because he was going up against Denver. This week he can't stream against Blake Bortles because he's going up against Minnesota. So.
Yes, I have Minnesota in about half my leagues.
You're in good shape this week. And so, the only other defense that I had on there was Atlanta, simply because they're going up against LA's defense, and just LA is so bad. Their offense. LA gives up the 4th most amount of fantasy points to the defensive position in standard defensive scoring leagues. So, it's bad, and Atlanta's they're owned in 15% of Yahoo leagues, so obviously they're readily available if you're willing to go that direction. So,
my other defense that I'm really feeling good about right now, I'm going to give you some stats, and let's see if you can guess who it is. It's a team that is 7-1 in their last 8 games. They have scored double-digit points twice in the last 3 weeks and have 6 turnovers in the last 3 weeks. Can you guess who it is?
I can, because I know who you're talking about.
I should have not told you before the show, but I was trying to get a little bit of an effect.
I probably could have guessed it because I've streamed them, and you actually used them for DFS a couple of weeks, and that is the Detroit Lions. Their defense is coming on strong.
Yes, no one has scored more than 20 points on them since week 6. If you're able to hold a team under 20 points and you have Matt Stafford as your quarterback, as long as he's not looking for Marvin Jones, you're going to win the game.
Well, it helps when Marvin Jones sits because he's injured, so that you can just throw it to Golden Tate.
I am still bitter about that because that has been one of the biggest flops, in my opinion, of the season, because he was one that I picked as a good player to stream, kind of a breakout year. He'll finally not be behind the shadows of AJ Green. He just kind of vanished, and I think there's more to his leg injury. I think it's been something that's been bothering him and slowing him down, because they made the comment a few weeks ago that they're throwing to the open receiver, which is kind of a shot at Marvin Jones, saying he can't get open. I think that's more speed than skill, looking at Marvin Jones, and I think his leg injury has been a little bit longer coming than they've told us. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, he had a few weeks that he was targeted twice, 5 times, 7 times. I mean, he was regularly getting 5 to 7 targets. I mean, you look at the first 3 weeks, 10 targets. He only had 4 catches for 85 yards, 11 targets for 8 catches, 8 targets for 6 catches. Then it was 7-5, 6-5, 7-5, and then 2. And then he had 11 targets in week 12, but he only came down again with 4 catches for 54 yards. So, yeah,
this week Detroit plays Chicago. Once again, this is a team that is riddled with injuries, almost as bad as the Cleveland Browns. They're down to their 3rd-string quarterback, their 3rd and 4th-string receivers, their 2nd-string tight end, their 2nd-string running back, and they're not playing San Francisco this week. So I don't see the brother bear in Jordan Howard going off on Detroit, considering the sound defense they are playing, having just picked the ball off 3 times from Drew Brees in New Orleans. Drew Brees is always a sound player and a very, very smart. He's a number 1 pick in New Orleans against a defense that has been vulnerable. But right now, Detroit is playing too well to be considered a vulnerable defense. Since the bye, they are stout.
In terms of just overall in fantasy, Detroit has given up the 9th fewest points to running backs so far this year. I mean, that's overall for the year. I mean, their pass defense is what was killing them all year. So their run defense has actually been pretty good. So
Matt Barkley's not airing the ball out.
No. I mean, I can actually pull up their rush defense per game. They are about the middle of the pack. They're giving up less than 100 yards rushing a game. So,
okay. So, is there any notable news or newsable notes anymore for the rest of the show?
I think in terms of football news, no. We made this announcement kind of at the end of the last podcast that this possibly could be my last podcast for the fantasy football season. With my wife, actually the due date for the baby was today. So, and since
that's what your life is for the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. So, and so I may be off. It looks like Greg will not be able to make it off for Wednesday night for the third show airing on Thursday. So Jess will probably be doing a solo show.
You're stuck with me. You're stuck with me, people. I make no apologies for what's going to go down.
I like to hear that.
I make no predictions either.
And then next Monday, the baby should be here by then. So if it's possible that I could be on next Monday's show, but probably not. And I believe we have lined up. I'm confirming tonight. I believe we will be having Johnny Slokes of the Fifth Down Fantasy Football Podcast as a guest / co-host with Justin for next Monday / Tuesday show. So, I hope you guys all have in case I'm not on again, I hope you guys until the off season. I hope you guys all have a great fantasy football playoffs. I hope what information and insight and advice I've been able to give has been helpful to you guys, and good luck in the fantasy playoffs.
Okay, you've been listening to the Skull King Fantasy Football Podcast. We want to thank you guys for stopping by. It has been brought to you by Vox DFS and VoxDFS.com. Vox DFS Firelines, voxdfs.com. Hopefully our week 14 goes better than Colin Kaepernick's. Signing off, this is Justin.
And I'm Ryan.
Have a good week.
All right, we'll talk to you later, guys.